Locked into RSVP with Jill Munroe here on KBLA Talk 1580. So, listen, there's a lot of memoirs out there. Tis the season, I guess. I wonder how many people are actually reading them and how many people are actually just taking in the highlights off of social media or the quick clips that are dropping into the programs. Are we actually diving into these books? I have my copy of Worthy. I haven't started it yet. I thought I was going to get into it this weekend. Didn't happen. But I have that to look to read. I actually have Rich Paul's memoir, Lucky Me. I want to get into that. And I'm thinking, after listening to a couple of these Britney Jean clips, that I might get Britney Spears' memoir. But I think with Britney, the thing that's different for me than maybe some of these others is that, for the last 20 years, she's been locked down. She has not been able to express herself. Like I said, we see her, dirty dancing in the low rise thongs in her living room, but that's about it. We're just starting to hear her thoughts about things. So, not that these other people don't have things to get out, but I'm a little not as dialed in moment to moment with Britney. So, I may check out her memoir and see what she has to say. But speaking of, people are watching with bated breath, waiting to see what happens with Jada as far as her book sales, right? It's headlines, it's been everywhere. It feels like the best parts of the book, the things that we really wanted to get into, that we learned about through these mainstream interviews that she did. Good Morning America, she did the Today Show with Hoda, a couple of other things, podcasts. She did the Jay Shetty podcast, she did All the Smoke with Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson, a couple of other things. We saw her all over the place, right? So I think that for some, they didn't really see a need to buy her book because they felt like, what more could I learn? I watched the Red Table Talk. I've heard a snippet from every single one of these interviews and everybody else's opinions about it. Do I really need to go buy the book? What am I really going to be hearing that I haven't heard? I heard her thoughts on Tupac. I found out they were separated. We already heard the August breakdown. Unless they're giving us more names,
We
what
all
are we
heard the
doing?
slap.
We heard about the slap. So listen. Allegedly, right now, it's looking as if the book isn't selling as many copies as one might expect, given the media impressions that came along with it. So it was released October 17th, and the word is that it's not making a lot of impact on the bestsellers list. So this is per Newsweek. They allegedly reached out to, well, not allegedly, they reached out to Jada's representatives and in response, because Amazon Books is the world's most popular book selling site according to Statista, and Worthy right now is at number 81 on the bestsellers list, and it's only garnered 114 ratings and 64 reviews, and it failed to make the top 100 on the Kindle e-reader chart, and it had only sold less than 3,000 copies at the end of last week. But I think today's only the 24th, and it was just released on the 17th. I think give it a chance. Another thing is a book is not like a podcast or something else. You can't just pop it in and go. So maybe people are digesting it or taking their time to get to it. I think that, number 81 is not bad, right? I think Terrell Owens would agree that's a pretty good number. So we'll have to see what it's all said and done, where it lands. But it looks like no matter what, she will be a New York Times bestselling author. And we'll just have to see where it lays out. But I think that unfortunately, it's looking like she is, in a strange way, a victim of overexposure at the moment. I think that maybe some of those interviews were just too much information. Maybe it should have been a little coy or a little closer to the actual release of the book. So maybe people would be more inclined to pick it up. But like I said, there's still time. So we will see. So listen, speaking of memoirs, John Stamos, he's an actor that became popular in the 80s. Started off, one of his popular early roles was as Blackie on General Hospital, daytime soap opera that came on ABC. And then he moved on to film. And then, of course, like I said, eventually he was on Full House for many years, right? So in 1986, he starred in a movie called Never Too Young to Die with Prince's protege, Vanity. Spoiler alert. I loved Vanity back in the day. So, you said you too? Yeah, Vanity was amazing. I think I was about in seventh grade. I met her in Century City at this park because a girl that I went to school with, she was having like a barbecue or something in the park. I don't remember what it was for. But Vanity lived in her building in a condo on the other floor. So I don't know why she was at the park, but she was at the park and she like went back to her apartment and came back and brought us little autographed postcards for her album.
You still have it?
Somewhere. I don't actively know where it is, but I did keep it.
In my travels, I actually I've come across a signed poster of hers, promo poster, probably like what you received, and it hangs in my room to this day.
See, I feel you on that. Like, I should say she was coked out that day, like out of her mind, God. But she was really sweet. Like, I
So
really.
this was kind of like towards the end.
No, this was a long time ago. This was not towards the end. She was Vanity. She had left. This was after she had left the group Vanity Six.
Okay, so yeah,
Yeah.
like Enter the Dragon.
Yeah, it was The Last Dragon, you mean. Laura Charles, step on the elevator, press number 7. That's all you have to do to get to seventh heaven. Yes, sir. So it was around then. And, but yeah, she was like gone. I don't even know that I understood what being coked out. Like, I didn't understand drugs, or I knew what they were. I had seen, I'm an 80s baby. Nancy Reagan, This Is Your Brain on Drugs with the cracked egg. So you knew about drugs, but just, there weren't the Gator movies so that you knew somebody was tripping out or whatever. But we could tell something was wrong. But she was really sweet. It was a highlight for me. And maybe a year later, Apollonia like spoke to us on the first day of school. Same friend, but we went to school with her brother. I don't know. Interesting time anyway. Because I didn't understand that at all. I know this is a random side, but what did Apollonia do that she needs to be speaking to us on the first day of school and encouraging, but flash her stuff in Purple Rain?
Yeah, no, I feel that. Like, it's an interesting select to talk to y'all.
I remember we were standing in the whatever the yard when she was on the mic, and we were just kind of looking like, what is happening here? We didn't even understand it as kids.
It's like when they just kind of get a celebrity, just someone that they think will connect with, like the youth, maybe.
So this was a private school, and the interesting thing about it is, like I said, her brother went there, but so did like Jason Bateman went there. Alyssa Milano went there. Later, after I was gone, Drew Barrymore went there. It actually was the last school that Monica Lewinsky went to. So they're like, I went to school, the kids, their parents were celebrities. They were musicians or, hedge funds. So it was like, it was weird. And that's why it was especially weird, because all these people, and what are we doing? Anyway, that is a wayside. So let's get back to John Stamos's autobiography. So he has an autobiography that's coming out. And in it, he shared a story about Vanity that is crazy. He said that, they went to dinner because they were in the movie, a couple in the movie. And he said that moments after he met Vanity, it was a cast dinner, but this is the first time he said she gave him a hand job under the table. He didn't ask. She didn't ask him if it was okay. She just did it. He was like, I'm not even sure how it starts. It was small talk. And she gently rearranged a napkin in his lap. And he said the next thing he knew, she was all in. And he said it was exciting but nerve wracking. And that she like had a slight smile on her face. And she was having an a regular conversation with the director who is discussing the nuanced attraction between their two characters, Stargrove and Danja. That was what their characters' names were in Never Too Young to Die. And meanwhile, she was working it out. Bop, 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 bop. Uninvited and unincurred. But what he did go on to say is that, Vanity, who her birth name is Denise Matthews, and she had basically rejected the moniker of Vanity in that time in her life, towards the end of her life. He said that he felt she was working out some sex and violence issues that she had growing up. He said, looking back, he felt for her because her dad abused her until he passed away. He said, then she was modeling at 17 and got molded into this sex pot image by an influential man who wanted her to make, nasty girl. Because remember, I'm not sure if you guys have heard the story, but Prince originally wanted to name Vanity Six.
The hookers.
No, something else.
I always have understood it to be that, but no, something even wilder.
Yeah, it's another V word, and he wanted her name to be this V word 6. Kitty 6, but the proper word for kitty.
The scientific word.
Yeah, the V word. She never would have made it.
I mean, the crazy part is that band could work now, but back then it was just crazy.
Listen, Vanity, like them coming out with, walking out in that lingerie and stuff, and I think it dropped in 82, seemed very, very lascivious and wild.
Yeah, they were all types of harlots. I remember reading that Vanity, and even in her later life, was actually really religious.
Yes.
When she met Prince. So, like, to take someone who's already really conservative about this and put them out there like that, I could understand how that level of confliction happens.
I mean, because Vanity, she was Canadian. So she wasn't, she met Prince backstage at the American Music Awards when she was 19 years old. And so it just got really crazy. He said he talked about, he meaning John Stamos, that she had a cocaine problem. She was freebasing cocaine. Then she tripped onto stronger things, and obviously she got into religion. And we know she was very, very religious. She was a preacher, and she passed away in February of 2016, 3 months before Prince passed away. So, he said that he imagines a lot was done to her, and somehow doing a little something to a younger, inexperienced guy at the moment, gave her a feeling of sort of reclaiming her power. So, he had a story. I'm sure in theory, right, he wasn't too broken up about it or too traumatized, even though, of course, it's not something that most people would advocate, for it to happen. He also discussed his 2 nose jobs that he got earlier on and how he kept them a secret and things of that nature. So if you're into John Stamos and you want to get more into that backstory, you can go ahead and check that out. Is it just the holiday time? I am wondering why there's so many memoirs that are being released. Seems a little, I don't know, excessive, but at any rate. So we've been talking a lot on the show as of late about, this is the year of the woman sort of in hip hop. Women have been running things, but on the flip side of that, this was the first year for, I think, many months into the year where there had been no rap #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 or the Billboard Hot 200, right? And so even though it felt like women were bringing more fun back into the mix and you could party and enjoy their songs more, some were tiring of the P-rap and all of that, feeling like there's not a lot of range in there. But at the same time, we don't have a lot of range from a lot of, our male-dominated artists. So people are going to say what they want to. But recently, Snoop Dogg gave some advice to Lotto as she continues her climb. They were part of the Musicians on Musicians cover shoot at United Records recording studio recently. And so they had a candid conversation that, of course, will be released as an interview at some point. And they were discussing the business aspect of, music and what it comes with. Obviously, Snoop has been in the game for, 30 years now. We were robbed of the 30th anniversary Doggy Style concert with an orchestra at the Hollywood Bowl that was set to take place this year. Still sad about that, but maybe it'll come back next year, and I do think there's going to be a documentary attached to it. But at any rate, Snoop was having a conversation with Lotto. Lotto is 24. She has been in the game for a long time now, just really starting to really take off. We know she was featured on the Rap Game, had the opportunity to sign with Jermaine Dupri, turned that down because she felt like he wanted to keep her in a more kiddie range, and she was ready to expand out and be more of an adult. And obviously her approach seemed to work because she's doing well. She has a hit with On the Floor, and there's the one before that I think did pretty well, charted pretty high. So she and Snoop had an hour-long conversation. She's 24, Snoop is 52, like I said, 30 years in the game. And Lotto brought up the fact that she feels like the music industry doesn't recognize talent anymore. Again, another topic that we've been talking about quite a bit as far as to artist development with these artists, and if they are really being, taught the game, taught the art of performance, taught the stamina, because we've seen a lot of lackluster performances. So Snoop had a response for Lotto, and we will get into what he had to say on the other side. You're locked into RSVP with Jill Munroe on KBLA Talk 1580. Stick and stay for news and sports on the other side.
Trending topics and the hottest happenings. You're listening to RSVP with Jill Munroe on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Doug Davis, and here's the latest from the Black Information Network. A Baltimore, Maryland judge has sentenced 16-year-old black squeegee worker Tavon Scott to 15 years for manslaughter in the shooting death of Timothy Reynolds near the Inner Harbor. Former President Obama says an Israeli ground invasion of the Gaza Strip could backfire if Palestinian civilians are not protected. Israel has been gearing up for an attack, calling up more than 300,000 reservists after a Hamas attack this month killed more than 1,000 Israelis. Elon Musk thinks a World War III is possible. The billionaire said in a talk on a social media platform X that the war between Israel and Hamas, along with Russia's continued war in Ukraine, raises the potential of a third world war. And that is the latest. I'm Doug Davis from the Black Information Network and BINnews.com. Stay safe out there. Have a great Tuesday.
Escape with the best stories of the year on Audible. Hear celebrity memoirs, mysteries, true crime, sci-fi, and more. Ignite your imagination with audiobooks, podcasts, and originals. Sign up for a free 30-day trial at audible.com.
To boldly go where no man has gone before.
Boldly taking talk radio where it has never gone before. New vistas, new voices, new views, new visions, new victories. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we're taking public media black. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles is a nonprofit law firm that protects and advances the rights of the most underserved, leveling the playing field and ensuring that everyone can have access to the justice system. Every year, LAFLA provides free, high-quality legal services to more than 100,000 people living in poverty across greater Los Angeles. Their unique combination of neighborhood offices, self-help centers at courthouses, and domestic violence clinics puts Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles on the front lines in vulnerable communities and at the forefront of change. LAFLA's expert team of attorneys, paralegals, and support staff works to provide direct representation, offer counsel and advice, provide referrals, and educate the community about their legal rights through workshops and seminars. With locations all over LA, you can access their services or volunteer to help no matter where you live. And if you have an urgent issue, call 213-235-0060. That's 213-235-0060. To get legal help, make a donation, or volunteer, visit lafla.org. lafla.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
eBay Motors is here for the ride. So minivans, sedans, JDMs, roll out. Go ahead, feel your engine. Admire that perfectly installed exhaust. Your vehicle's moving along this freeway like it was made from fresh installs and a whole lot of love. And with eBay Motors, you get over 122 million parts to keep it running. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, they'll be the perfect fit every time. Plus, at these prices, well, we're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions because we've got your black. Listen up. If you're one of the more than 100,000 California tenants who were rejected or delayed when applying for COVID rental assistance, you've got a second chance. Under the terms of a new settlement, California's Housing and Community Development Department agreed to audit its past denials. The program ended in March 2022, but the advocacy groups Alliance of Californians for Community Empowerment, Policy Link, and Strategic Actions for a Just Economy sued the department. According to the coalition's analysis of state data, the department rejected nearly 30% of all applicants. Under the settlement, the department agreed to clear all renters in the pipeline within 6 months. The settlement applies to anyone who sought assistance from the state's Housing is Key program before April 1st, 2022, whose applications is pending or was denied after June 6, 2022. Tenants who have questions about the status of their application can call the hotline at 833-430-2122. That's 833-430-2122. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. Curating the most compelling stories and delivering them straight to your ears. You're listening to RSVP with Jill Munroe on KBLA Talk 1580.
What to do, I just apply. It's economics, my business ain't got the suit and tie. Keep a pistol at all times, want what's mine. I can't oblige, dog, I work too hard. So reach for it, get referred to God, I'm going hard. I know you desperate for a change, let the pen glide. But the only real change come from inside. But the only real change come from inside. But the only real change come from cemeteries on chains, I see men cry, but the only real change come from inside.
Welcome back in. You are locked in to RSVP with Jill Munroe here on KBLA Talk 1580. Thank you, VIPs, for rocking with us. Listen, before I get back to Snoop Dogg and Lotto, I just want to acknowledge that today is the 45th anniversary of the release of The Wiz. Like, that is a classic, right? Completely different from the stage play, The Wiz, obviously, because that version was still in Kansas, right? Dorothy still lived on a farm. The film version took place in New York City, utilized street elements like graffiti and dance. Also, the Wiz's Emerald City sequence, which is one of my favorites. We were using that word opulence earlier to describe Rick Ross's music. The scene in Emerald City, you gotta be seen in green. You know, you wouldn't be caught dead, not in red. That was like luxe to me, luxury. Just all of those beautiful black faces, all of that fashion. Didn't know it at the time. And it's funny, earlier this year, I did this podcast called Not Past It, where we reflected on, you know, the significance of the film The Wiz. And they're actually bringing the play back to Broadway. I'm not sure which version they're going to use, but that Emerald City sequence, 400 dancers, 3 costume changes, because remember, it was green, red, and gold, right? They had designs by like all the 70s big dogs. Oscar de la Renta, Bill Blass, Ralph Lauren, Halston in the 70s. Come on. Norma Kamali and more. There was 22 playback speakers, almost 400 crew members. It took them 4 nights of shooting to do this. And, you know, there were some cameos. Of course, Quincy Jones playing the piano, right, at the beginning. Iman, supermodel, was featured in one of the scenes walking down. Like, that's iconic. I didn't know that at the time. It just, something about that scene was just amazing to me. Just incredible. The big camera walking around. It was lovely. I love The Wiz. Come on, you look like you had something to say.
Oh, I mean, that movie is legendary.
Right.
Yeah, like everything that you're describing about it, from first off, from the people who even starred in it,
Correct.
It's just like, let's talk about that.
Diana, Michael, Ted Ross, Nipsey Russell, where Nipsey Hussle got his name from.
Most people don't, a lot of people don't know that.
Richard Pryor. I mean, Mabel King, who played Eveline. Lena Horne as Glinda. Like, just amazing
There's so much history in that whole production from start to finish when you really think about it.
Facts.
It's like 100 years of Black Hollywood.
It really is. And just like the music, the original songs that were created. I didn't realize Luther Vandross wrote Brand New Day.
I didn't know that either.
Or was somehow involved in. I have to fact check myself. I might be, pulling a little string, but I do believe that, he was involved. And of course, there was the controversy because a lot of people felt at the time Diana Ross was too old to be playing Dorothy. They rewrote some of the script, turning Dorothy from a 16-year-old schoolgirl to a 25-year-old school teacher. Because Diana really, really wanted that role. A lot of people were sad that Stephanie Mills, didn't get the role that she originated on Broadway. But it still was an amazing film. I feel like The Wiz is a movie that teaches you everything you need to know about life, right? The power of friendship, believing in yourself. It's all right there in you. We see the seduction when they go by the poppy fields, working together. It does. So go watch The Wiz. Celebrate. I think that it's been taken off Netflix. It's always sad when things go away from there. Beth Ann Hardison, that's the other supermodel that was in there with Iman. These were 2 huge models in the 70s,
You just put me on game because I didn't even know. I didn't even take that in consideration. I didn't even know there were models in the film.
They were in the Emerald City scene. Like, they weren't it's just a lingering camera moment. The average person probably wouldn't know, but obviously done deep dives into The Wiz because it's the best. And there's so much, like you said, there's so much history in it. The choreography, it was at the time, the most expensive shoot ever filmed at the World Trade Center at the time.
Really?
Yeah. And so,
it was a lot of dancers. I'm just
400
from like a budgeting perspective. Like, that is a lot of people.
400 dancers, 400 crew members. a 10-minute sequence.
Yeah, nah, that's probably a bulk of the budget.
I mean, listen, that whole film, I need to look. I don't remember, it was considered a flop, I think, at the time, and then became a cult favorite later.
That's interesting, because I always thought, like, at least from the way that I perceived it, from like the way my parents and grandparents told me about it, was that this was just a black version of The Wizard of Oz, and we all went to see it, and we all had it, and we all had to have it.
So here's the thing, it's very true, and it was a commercial failure, right? But it was a cultural phenomenon, because you think about when it came out 45 years ago, so that's like 77, 78, something like that. There were not a lot of black blockbuster musicals on the scene. And I think, obviously it dealt with a lot of backlash because, especially at that time period, are white people going to show up for a black film? That was very much the conversation.
A valid conversation for back then as well.
Yeah, I mean, because it wasn't, they weren't marketing to black people. They didn't believe in black superstars and things of that nature. So it went through some things. We don't really know why, but it went on to become, a cultural icon, something that is just embedded in the culture that people consider a classic, but it definitely wasn't at the time. It was a $24 million production budget, and at the box office, it only earned $13.6 million. So
it was a real flop. Like, they lost money on it.
Yeah. It did
sometimes
not
they'll just break even almost. They'll be like, oh, it was $32 million budget, so it's a $28 million box office. Like, you can make the other part up, but that was by half.
Yeah, it definitely, became the hit after the fact. I think the soundtrack did really, really well, though, obviously, but it definitely didn't do what people, wanted to do, but it did in the black community. I think there's a thing, too, of where it was put at the time. It was harder to put films in theaters because they felt like, people weren't going to show up and they're not going to market it in the same way. And we think that we deal with that type of thing now, but can you imagine in the 1970s? And this is also before Michael Jackson was a star, before, he was...
This before Thriller?
It was, yes, definitely. Before Thriller, it was before Off the Wall, too.
Whoa.
It was, so here you go. The Wiz led into Off the Wall. It was all like stair steps. So Michael was a star, but he was unproven at the time. So, classic movie, though. And we love it now. It's so crazy. Sometimes it takes a second for things to catch up to us. Is it time? Well, so listen, on the other side, I'm sorry I got sidetracked by the Wiz, but I think that is a very worthy conversation. You got some Wiz facts here. We went through some things. I mean, you think about what Berry Gordy did as far as a producer, and it was coming off of the heels of Lady Sings the Blues and Mahogany. So, of course, everybody expected it to do better, but it just didn't. At any rate, on the other side, we will get into what's the advice that Snoop Dogg had for Lotto, because, listen, it's a different game out here. Hip-hop is going through a different phase. Hip-hop is middle-aged, y'all. Really think about that. Hip-hop is middle-aged. You were locked into RSVP with Jill Munroe on KBLA Talk 1580.
Infusing a sense of fun and entertainment in every episode. You're listening to RSVP with Jill Munroe on KBLA Talk 1580. More when we come forward.
Boom, 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 boom.
Nissan has a car for every driver who wants more. More action. More fun. More guts. More head turns. More adventure. More electric. At Nissan, more is all we do.
Some people won't give you the real talk on drugs, but it's time we know the facts. Fentanyl is killing people. It's a powerful opioid, often made illegally and commonly mixed with illicit drugs. It can even be pressed into counterfeit pills that resemble prescription medications. Just 2 milligrams, about the size of a few grains of sand, can potentially be lethal. This isn't an ad to scare you, but it is an ad to make you think twice. Get the facts. Go to realdealonfentanyl.com. This message is brought to you by the Ad Council.
At Charmin, we heard you shouldn't talk about going to the bathroom in public, so we decided to sing about it.
Roll Charmin ultra strong when you drop in the beat. It cleans with way less effort on your seat. Yeah, roll it, drop it. Yeah, roll it, drop it. Okay. Charmin flows extra strong from the road. Your butt hella clean while you're sitting on the bowl. Yeah, it's all you need for that bathroom groove. Get you in and out without nothing to prove.
Charmin Ultra Strong cleans better so you can use less. Enjoy the go with Charmin.
Now back to more captivating conversation on RSVP with Jill Munroe.
You are locked into RSVP with Jill Munroe here on KBLA Talk 1580. Listen, go check out The Wiz real quickly. And since we're talking about what to go check out, hit up some of that Richard Roundtree catalog. Go watch Shaft, of course. But also, Richard has worked consistently. Check him out. He was on Being Mary Jane recently, right? He was on that old soap opera Generations. Do you remember when he and Ron O'Neal played Whitley and Dwayne's parents along with Patti LaBelle and Diane Carroll on A Different World? That was classic. That was when like TV meant something. There were moments meant something. You see that and you immediately know the impact these icons of stage and screen coming on to this show. It really was, important. Our libraries are burning down. We have to make sure that we tap in with the history so that we understand the challenges and what it meant, especially for someone like Richard Roundtree in the role of Shaft. That was one of the first Black on-screen sex symbols, coming on the heels of Sidney Poitier and what he did is, dignified and things of that nature. Moving into the Black exploitation era was a different type of swag, a different type of confidence that came along with it. Oh, I forgot. Richard was also in Roots and Soul Food. So listen.
Richard Roundtree, right?
Yeah. Yep. So go check out some of his stuff too, along with The Wiz. We got to stay cultured up and tapped in, and not just stuff that we read in passing on social media. Really get to know the work and the art and understand why these people are important and why we value them and salute them and the struggles that they had coming up in this business. Because I think too, 50 years is a long time ago, but in theory, it's not. Look how much we have changed and then reverted back in that time period. So I think it is important to, know the history on things, understand the struggle that some of our artists went through to, arrive at the point where we are. So listen, I was talking about Lotto and Snoop Dogg and their conversation. Snoop has been in the game for 30 plus years at this point. Kind of hard to believe that the guy that was like, you don't love me, you just love my doggy style, is still around and is the best pitch man since Ed McMahon, pitching everything. It really is in some ways a joy to see, because if in 1993, at the height of doggy style mania, when Snoop was standing on the roof of VIP Records in Long Beach, I wonder if somebody walked up to him and told him, hey, listen, you're going to be selling everything. Coronas, car insurance, food.
Cheetos.
Everything, right? You're going to be on TV with Martha Stewart, the whitest woman possible, and you guys are going to be BFF, cooking and talking trees, and you're going to do it all as your authentic self.
Do you know that Snoop has over 1,000 features? Or this might be over a couple thousand features, where he has just been featured on other artists' tracks.
That, you know what? That's crazy, but it makes sense because you think about 30 years is a long, long time to still be relevant in entertainment. 2, Snoop, I feel has the approach, I'm not turning down nothing but my collar, So, I mean, I talked about a couple weeks ago how he said that, like, none of the alcohol brands that he endorses, he doesn't drink any of them. Not his 21 Crimes, not Corona, none of it. And that all of the brands that he signs with knows that he doesn't drink it. He's like, I don't have to drink it to promote it, and they're cool with it. And I thought, like, the way that he moves through the endorsement space and just the things that he's able to do are really kind of incredible if you think about.
They are innovative to tell the company that's endorsing you or that you're endorsing, like, yeah, I'm gonna promote it, but I don't really drink it. Like, to just tell them that flat out, to not even act like, not to say that there's a level of disinterest, but to not even act like you're a fan of the product. That is a very innovative way to move about it. Like, hey, this is a transaction, and that's it.
That's it. I'm promoting your brand, and that's all that we're gonna do. Oh, the chat is really lit. Let's see what's going on in there. Urban Spinster said, "What up? Hello. How are you?" DJ Black 909 says, "The real change starts inside." And they're joining us as the salute to The Wiz. Urban Spinster mentioned Candy Burris behind The Wiz on Broadway coming back. I have to fact check that. I'm not sure. That would be interesting if she was. I mean, Candy is a money-making machine. Nobody can say that Candy isn't about her coin. A true Taurus queen. I appreciate Taurus queens because I'm one, and we're about our coin. So, Fahima says the MJ and Diana Ross and The Wiz was fire for me. Was for me too. Listen, Ease on Down the Road, when they started off, Michael and those like effortless flips and dancing, it just looked like joy. Fahima also says hip hop got their AARP card. Isn't that crazy? That is crazy to me. Hip hop is for real middle age, like grays in the beard, little saggy, little pooch, all of that. Urban Spencer says that was when a separate soundtrack was always released on a black film to help promote it before it came out in theaters. I think you're right about that because Claudine had its own soundtrack. A lot of films did that you necessarily wouldn't have expected that. Listen. We love us a classic, and we are going to support and stay down. Maybe not at the time. One of the questions that I was asked when I did this interview, and one of the reasons I was even approached, is because I'm a TV and film critic. I've shared that with you. I belong to the African American Film Critics Association, the Hollywood Critics Association, and some other stuff, NABJ, things like that. But in conversation we were having about the film, and the host was asking about the reaction of critics. Now, obviously, I don't know. I was a little kid. It wasn't those things. But I, much like you, Kamal, knew what family members felt, what, neighbors felt as far as blackness. And they wanted to go in the theater to see a reflection of us, to see, a family situation that looked like home. You think about at the opening where they sing Don't Lose the Feeling That We Had, where they're at dinner and things like that. It was just... Again, especially at that time, we don't understand the privilege that we currently have with the way that we are able to connect with each other now, and the way that we're able to reach.
It's seamless. It's instant.
It's no, gatekeeping, and there's still gatekeeping. I'm not going to act like there isn't, but the barriers are much, much lower, and you definitely can move around it, and it's much easier for you to find your tribe and to make the connections, and there's more respect for counterculture. So,
counterculture is almost become mainstream because
facts.
It's been so embraced by the mainstream, which is not counterculture. So it's like it's being mainstream counterculture. Basically, like the grunge, the Y2K, any subset or subculture that's like being experienced right now in this zeitgeist has already been popularized by what would be considered mainstream.
I agree with you 100%. I mean, you even think about the fact that Sexy Red is on the sideline at football games and stuff like that. And this is no shade. I'm not saying that she shouldn't get her opportunity, but, very quick transition from I have a heater single buzzing out to I am everywhere at these high profile things.
Right.
Whereas before 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago, there would be a hesitance to put someone with those lyrics that, is shamelessly promoting some things that at one point in time we might have considered degenerate. Again, no shade. I'm not judging and saying that. It's just,
I feel like there's more people to get through too, though. Like back then, like you had to get through a manager, an agent, make it backstage. Like there was a lot more legwork that had to happen. Now all she has to do is, depending on her label situation, say, hey, we need PR. We need her at this show. Let's make it happen.
and people
it
are
happens
asking
just like
for
that.
it. I mean, think about this too. She had a sex tape leak, and we've moved on. It was just a couple weeks ago.
Like no one batted an eye, really.
And, you think about the scandal that happened, like with Pamela and Tommy Lee back in the day. Think about Paris Hilton, Kim, all of that stuff. And now people's sex tapes are getting dropped on a random Tuesday, and everyone's just like,
I feel like the Kim thing shifted the paradigm, though.
It
like
really
we don't
did.
see that. I don't want to say popularizing because of the sex tape, but for lack of better terms, that rise of notoriety after a sex tape. The only person that I've known within the zeitgeist to experience that was Kim Kardashian and the Kardashians.
Now, Kim definitely with what happened, but Kim had the benefit too of a mom that had a plan.
Yeah.
And had
Oh, yeah.
direction. And we can talk all day about what you feel about Kris Jenner's morals and standing, but she executed not once, not twice, but a few times. She did it initially back in the 90s with Bruce, helping to guide him and re-energize his career, when more than just a triathlete.
Right.
And got them, up and running. She's very strategic. Now, you talking about $500K or dinner with somebody, I would still want the $500K, but I would love a sit down with Kris Jenner.
Yeah, it's
Love
interesting.
it.
The ones that we sometimes don't tend to highlight because we have like a feeling of moral ambiguity with them, oftentimes would probably have like even more game or a different type of game than we might expect ourselves to even need.
I definitely feel like Kris Jenner just, kind of her positioning. Now, granted, we know that some of that is, white woman privilege, but I won't ascribe everything to that.
Right, no.
Because you could have given someone else the exact same opportunities that Kim had, and you wouldn't have gotten the same results. When we come forward, we're going to get into DJ Envy and word that he's going to be cooperating with the investigation. We're also going to talk a little bit about Dwight Howard and the admissions that have come forward from that. Shout out to Fahima in the chat. She said, Jill, some folks still do consider Sexy Red's antics degenerate. They do, but there's not as much pushback as we would have seen in the past. She certainly is getting a lot of mainstream opportunity for the songs, the material that she puts out, and the imagery and some of the photos that we've seen. But we'll get into that on the other side. You were locked into RSVP with Jill Munroe on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Doug Davis, and here's the latest from the Black Information Network. A Baltimore, Maryland judge has sentenced 16-year-old black squeegee worker Tavon Scott to 15 years for manslaughter in the shooting death of Timothy Reynolds near the Inner Harbor. Former President Obama says an Israeli ground invasion of the Gaza Strip could backfire if Palestinian civilians are not protected. Israel has been gearing up for an attack, calling up more than 300,000 reservists after a Hamas attack this month killed more than 1,000 Israelis. Elon Musk thinks a World War III is possible. The billionaire said in a talk on a social media platform X that the war between Israel and Hamas, along with Russia's continued war in Ukraine, raises the potential of a third world war. And that is the latest. I'm Doug Davis from the Black Information Network and BINnews.com. Stay safe out there. Have a great Tuesday.
Prime members save more at your Amazon Fresh store. As a Prime member, you'll save 10% on hundreds of items in store, from organic produce to pantry staples to handcrafted pizza. Head to Amazon.com/fresh locations and find a store near you.
Follow the leader. KBLA Talk 1580. Follow the leader.
If you're not following KBLA Talk 1580 on all of our socials, then you're missing out. Download our app and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and on the web at KBLA 1580.
That's right.
Again, you can find all of our socials at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
By the way, if you miss any of our weekday shows in real time, you can always catch up by checking out the podcast of your favorite shows at your leisure. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Got your beer. Follow the leader. Oh my God. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
If you see me and you tryna see what's up, he wanna with me, then I'ma have him stuck. Looking bad and got a stupid butt. Jewelry on your wrist, you hold it up. When I holler ski, that mean pull up.
Shout out to Sexy Red. One thing that I will say about Miss Sexy Red, she does seem authentic. I don't feel like she is putting on a front. I don't feel like she is enacting a character.
Ain't no cap in her rap.
No, I think that is exactly who she is. And, you got to give it up for showing up authentically as yourself. Welcome into Hour 3 of RSVP with Jill Munroe here on KBLA Talk 1580. This is the show where we hit all the trending topics and headlines across entertainment, sports, lifestyle, and culture. I am, of course, your host, Jill Munroe. And so we've been talking about, a multitude of things. Most recently, we talked about The Wiz. It's the 45th anniversary of the release of The Wiz, and though it was not a commercial success initially, we know that it is a classic in the Black community. I know there are people that probably it doesn't even register. They don't even understand that, nope, it wasn't a hit. It doesn't even make sense. But that's what happened. We also have been talking about female rappers and the change sort of in celebrity, and finishing up my Lotto and Snoop Dogg conversation, which kind of relates to the idea of what is getting attention in 2023, how quickly the ascent happens. So Lotto and Snoop were talking, and Lotto said that she feels that the music industry barely recognizes talent nowadays. And Snoop said, nowadays talent isn't involved anymore. They're moving talent out of the way because it's overnight successes that they can make. That's why when you really do have talent, you should hone it. Study the greats before you to see how they came to stay here a long time. And I think that is important. That's why we mention artist development a lot. A lot of these new artists don't have a proper stage show. They don't have breath control. They don't know how to command a stage. And performance is going to be one of your best friends if you decide to take on the music industry. I know music is a hustle for a lot of people now. It's just another dot to add to the list. Oh, yeah, I YouTube, I host, I got products, I got a streetwear brand. Yeah, I'm going to put out this song. I'm going to do this reality show down here. And then we're going to put out a wine golf course. You know what I'm saying?
I got a collaboration with a burger spot somewhere.
Exactly. There's a list. Everybody is all over the place, and they don't want to really get in the weeds and hone their craft. Everyone talks about Beyonce and they love Beyonce, but they don't respect the work that she puts in. They talk about it, but they don't apply that to themselves.
I can agree with that, because there's always detractors saying, oh, well, she's not a triple threat. She doesn't act. She doesn't do this. Well, that's because she's focusing on the music and the performance, regardless of how you feel about her outside ventures.
I mean, here's the thing, Beyonce, struggling over my words. Beyonce is acting the strongest part of her palette. No, but I also see the improvement that she's made over the years in some of her roles. Again, it's a hard thing to step outside of yourself at times, but I also feel like as much heat as they give Beyonce, and not to compare, but people felt like Aaliyah was on her way to an Oscar, and I don't really think so. And sometimes I think it's just that people have a hard time allowing celebrities to develop or grow in other areas, or if they feel like they're getting too much attention or too much praise, they immediately want to tear them down with whatever they do because it's just like an overcorrection or
I'm
response
saying
to
it's
it.
like it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. You don't
Correct.
focus on getting the craft right and the music and the art sounding right. Then it's like, oh well, you're not playing the game correctly. You need to be out here marketing and networking. The music doesn't have to be the focus. But then inversely, if you're not out here focusing on the music and you are marketing and networking, it can make the art lack. And then when the art lacks, that's when the fans start to leave. That's when you have to venture out into these other areas instead of focusing on that one thing that you initially got in to do very well.
Right. I do understand it because the music industry is a hard business, and it's hard to make money, and it takes a long time to get there. But if you choose that as your career, I don't understand why you wouldn't want to be the best performer out there. I mean, even Usher, I was watching something that Usher was talking about when his voice changed back in the day between his first and second albums, and he was really concerned. The label was really concerned. Might have been his second and third album. I can't remember, but one of those early albums. And he said he decided at that moment to really hone in on the performance aspect of it, looking at Michael Jackson, because he knew that touring was a big part of it. And he figured even if his vocals, if his voice didn't come back in the same, in the same way that it had before, that he would still be a strong performer and still would be able to tour and make money. And we see what the result of that is, because here's another one that's coming up on 30 years in the business, really, really getting their flowers, about to headline a major world tour next year, performing at Super Bowl. His Vegas residency has been doing numbers, a whole cultural phenomenon. And it's largely based on, of course, there's great music and great songs. We would never say that, Confessions, 8701, the My Way album. I am a personal fan from day one, first album. I'm waiting. I haven't seen him perform any of that stuff since the 90s. I would like one day for him to, do Many Ways or All the Time Think of You, something. Him and Diddy get out there and bop again and relive it again before they slide into I Need a Girl or something like that. It could work. It could work. That is my goal and my hope. But back to Lotto and Snoop, because I think that everyone is aware that we have a quality issue in entertainment. And it's not to say that, look, musical tastes change, styles change. The whatever the music of the youth is may not appeal to someone in their 30s, 40s, or whatever. It's not for them, and I understand that. But you gotta get your performance game up. Like some of this stuff, do you really think that 20, 30 years from now you'll be able to come back and hold down a show? If they have verses 2048, are you going to be able to rock that out?
Right. That's very true. Like, how do you show up in real time? Because all of the art and all of the music that we're presenting to an audience, it's all curated, it's all crafted, even sonically, from mixing to mastering. We create an image of what we want that sound to sound like at its best. But how does that translate to your live performance? And if it doesn't, what happens when people get tired of that sound? Like, how can you stand apart from the rest of the crowd?
Like, you might be able to, cultivate a one-hit wonder thing, but what is that going to
Well, I
look
feel
like?
that's what keeps happening, is that one-hit wonders keep getting cultivated, and then it's like, oh, well, this is the only person here, so the label's like, we're just going to keep pouring more money and pushing more and more until we force a return on our investment one way or another.
Because you think about it, you think about some of the top performers as far as hip hop, right? And there's, lots of guys going, but the fact that these old guys can still get out there and command a stage, breath control, clarity with their lyrics,
crowd control, able to get the crowd hyped, not coming out there looking like a bump on the log.
Right. I don't understand why it doesn't motivate some of these other rappers and singers to step their cookies up. On the other side, we'll get into finally what Snoop had to say to Lotto about what's happening, and we'll get into DJ Envy. Is snitching now part of the culture? I'm just playing with that. He absolutely should talk about things. You're locked into RSVP with Jill Munroe here on KBLA Talk 1580.
Trending topics and the hottest happenings. You're listening to RSVP with Jill Munroe on KBLA Talk 1580.
Thinking about hosting a podcast and don't know where to start? Morris Media Studios has you covered. We're a professional podcast and voiceover studio located in Leimert Park. We specialize in recording and live streaming audio and video podcasts. Let us help you set up, record, and distribute your podcast. Hosting a podcast is a great way to bring awareness to your business, product, or good cause. For more info, visit morrismediastudios.com or give us a call at 323-815-4204.
The Green Foundation, key health influencer, empowering our Black communities through action. The Green Foundation advocates for affordable health care, accessibility, and knows the importance of culturally relatable health care, regardless